1985, vintage Kishori Amonkar, Shudh Kalyan.
All right, Samarth, I think people are ready for you to begin.
All right. So I'm going to start today's session. We're going to be dealing. You can't hear me?
You can turn the volume down on the music.
Yeah. So we're going to start today's session on the Jaipur Gharana. Welcome everybody to the fourth part of the series. In the last few series, we heard some amazing music from the Gwalior and Agra Gharanas. And the week before that, we went over a general overview of the music itself. Today, we take on another beautiful, beautiful style of Hindustani classical music called the Jaipur Gharana style, or the Jaipur Gaiki, as we call it. This has been, it's not a very old Khyal style. It does come down from the Dhrupad tradition, like most other Gharana Gaikis. But the person who really gave it its form and its shape and its, and made it a very popular genre by creating a host of students as well is Alladia Khan Sahab, Ustad Alladia Khan. He was instrumental in creating a whole new canon of not just repertoire, but a whole new technique of presentation, voice, and all of that. So if you remember, we had spoken about what exactly makes a gharana an entity in its own, what distinguishes one gharana from the other. And we had spoken about 3 or 4 main characteristics, some of it being a repertoire, the kind of ragas and the preference of compositions that a particular gharana might have. Then there's technique, and then there's the presentation format. So in one of these things, when there's a novelty, when there's something new, and this stands the test of time for about 2 or 3 generations, we call it, it assumes, we don't call it, but it assumes a certain distinction. And then there's a gharana that is kind of formed. Most of these gharanas were formed about over a century ago. There are new offshoots that keep coming up here and there, but none of them have the same breadth and depth that these primary 4 or 5 gharanas gave to us. So today's subject is going to be the music and the musicians of the Jaipur Gharana of Khyal. It's a bummer that we had to move out of our regular platform where I could see you, but I'm very happy that we are able to do this through VUC, which is an initiative by another of our very good friends, musicians, and a part of our community. He's like a brother to me, Erin Hansen, who's started this company called VUC that allows multiple things. It allows people to get together. It's a community building as well as enabling, facilitating events, and all of that happens through this wonderful platform called VUC. And what better collaboration can there be with VUC and Brooklyn Raga Massive, 2 extremely genuine organizations dedicated to creating an environment of sustainable music for both audiences and for the musicians themselves. So thanks once again, before we start off, to Brooklyn Raga Massive for hosting this wonderful series of going deep into understanding what Hindustani classical vocal music is all about. Most lecture demonstrations that I've given before tend to be more surface level on explaining what is essentially raga, what is essentially a tal, how does the cycle of avartans go, and all of that, which is, I understand, is very important and significant. But this gave me also a new challenge to talk about broader and deeper concepts that show that it's not just any rag that makes classical music. Just because you're singing a rag, you could be singing something in teen tal and set to a rag, but that's still not a bandish, because a bandish has a certain quality to it. The way it binds rag, tal, sur, lay, and the lyrical aspect of it, and the way it's all brought together in a very specific manner. That's why when you listen to compositions that are over 100 years old, and you listen to something that's been created by somebody very recently, you might see a difference. I mean, I'm not saying the recent compositions are all bad, but if those that stand the test of time will eventually be considered as a part of the canon. But for something to be considered a bandish, there is an extra mile that the composition has to go. And likewise, for something to be considered classical music, just singing a raga or a song that is in a raga, or singing just murkis and khatkas, moving your voice in a way, or singing solfege, gama pada pada nida pamaga resa, doesn't make it classical. Playing tabla or a sitar or a flute or just an instrument that is Indian classical by nature doesn't make the music that you play Indian classical music, right? So what makes it Indian classical or Hindustani classical or Carnatic classical also for that matter is the discipline, the structure, and within that structure, the freedom and the expression that the artist is able to bring in. And each of these gharanas brings that exact quality. None of these gharanas is more superior to the other in any way. They all have at the heart, at the base, at the root of all of them, the one entity of getting lost into the music. The artist has to dissolve into the music. And the way they do it is different. Agra does it a certain way, Gwalior does it a certain way, and here we're going to talk about how Jaipur does it. Jaipur Gharana, one of the main things to remember, I mentioned there's a tradition of Dhrupad to it. And Dhrupad, there are different gharanas even in Dhrupad, Nauhar Bani, Gauhar Bani, Dagar Bani, and all of that. And I told you that Nauhar was the style from which the Agra Gharana descended into Khyal. Here, the ancestors of the Jaipur Gharana musicians were supposed to be, the researchers have told us that they were Drupadyas who followed the Dagar Bani, the Dagar style, or the also some of the Gauhar Bani style as well. Now, Khyal itself came to this gharana starting from Aladia Khan. Aladia Khan Sahab was a prolific musician, composer, guru, and a performer. Unfortunately, we don't have any recordings of his. There are some samples that have surfaced very recently, like 1-minute clips, but they're really not anything you can discern out of, you don't really get a glimpse of what his music must have been. Aladia Khan Sahab taught at least 8-10 different very prominent students. His sons, Burji Khan and Manji Khan, were two of them, very prominent. Following that, there were Kesarbai Kerkar, Mogubai Kurdikar, Haider Khan, Gullu Bhai Jasdanwala, and Bhaskar Baba Bakle, and several others that actually learnt from Aladia Khan Sahab. Coming from a Dhrupad tradition, coming from a tradition that had some element of, the elements of Dhrupad. I mean, we won't go into what exactly those elements were in this point, because then I'll be talking about Dhrupad for the next hour. Uh, One of the things that you will find in the compositions that are presented in Jaipur Gharana are that there is a very clear, defined structure in which you have to sing the composition. You cannot break off from it. It almost goes beat to beat. It's almost so tightly tied into that cycle of 12 beats or 10 beats or 16 beats that even a little bit, I mean, you miss half a quarter of a note, you hold it a little longer or you hold it too short, the balance is lost. So that uh, is something which is very special to Jaipur Gharana compositions. I'm going to play a small sample of a composition in Rag. I think I've chosen Gaud Malhar by Mallikarjun Mansoor. This is a live concert that he sang in Chennai back in, I think it must have been 1970s, what was written on the label that I got it. So Gaud Malhar by Mallikarjun Mansoor. Look at the way he starts the composition and look at the way he sings it without even the tabla coming in, just as is. Remember when we did Agra, we spoke about how they did a long Nom Tom Alap and then the composition. Gwalior didn't do that. Neither does Jaipur. They go jump straight into the composition. They sing the bandish. In this case, you'll see how Mansoorji starts off the composition without even uh, any opening alap or anything. That composition itself builds the mood and the ambience and the environment, the atmosphere of the rag. And then once he starts, the tabla comes in, and you will see him singing the composition exactly as he sang it before, but yet it falls into that beautiful, that cycle, that time of 16 beats. So that shows how clear and how exact the composition had to be presented or learned from a guru to a student. So here is Gaud Malhar, 1970, Mallikarjun Mansoor. Yeah, so as I was saying, the composition was sung exactly the way he was taught, perhaps, the way he structured it right in the beginning. And then the tabla came and he sang it two more times. And there was absolutely no change. Maybe here and there a little bit, but then there's the actual, the amount of time given to each note, to each word, and the milestones on what beat of the tal, or what turn he's going to take. Those things are very, very clear cut. And that is something that Dhrupad also emphasizes a lot on. So we see how Dhrupad influenced compositions of the Jaipur Gharana, because Aladia Khan Sahib was a Drupadiya. He had trained extensively in Drupad Gaiki from his uncle. And so then also from Haveli Sangeet. So a lot of the compositions come also from Jaipur Haveli Sangeet. Jaipur and Atrauli, there are two, Atrauli is another small village outside of Jaipur, which is in the state of Rajasthan in India. And the king there was a very large-hearted patron of the art. So he had all these musicians, but they used to also go and settle down in these little towns close by. So there are multiple, some people say that from Jaipur, they went and stayed in these little towns like Bundi and Atrauli, and others say that from Atrauli, they came and stayed at the Maharaja's court in Jaipur. So either way, there's also hyphenated Jaipur, Atrauli. We also know it by that name. So one of the hallmarks, again, coming back to the music part and out of the history, is that the Dhrupad element was very clear, is very important. We also see that it's the mukhda, or the, I don't know if you remember, we spoke about it last week, and those who weren't here last week, mukhda is the opening of the composition, the starting of the composition, right up to the sum, or the first line of the composition in some cases, if it's a Dhruvat composition, faster composition. But in Vilambit compositions or slow tempo compositions, we call the portion from the very starting of the composition to the first beat, where you land on the sum. That part is called the mukhda. And that mukhda is of extremely, the significance is huge, because in any music, in any gharana, you take your alaps and your tans and you come to your mukhda. But Jaipur takes it a notch further. There are, you'll find different kinds of mukhdas in Jaipur Gharana, but two very common are either very short mukhdas, it's just like a half beat or a quarter beat mukhda just before the sum, or they're very long drawn mukhdas and very complex mukhdas with a lot of tan inbuilt into it. So when the singer is singing, he or she has to keep the alap going, and the alap has to end in a way that blends in beautifully with the mukhda, without breaking the chain, without breaking the balance of the whole of the tempo and all of those things. You have to maintain it, so it becomes an additional level of complexity. So we'll listen to another composition, another recording now of one of the greatest musicians of all time, Kesar Bai Kerkar. Now, an interesting and pretty exciting piece of trivia is that her music is up there outside of the solar system right now, quite literally, because she was the one chosen to represent Indian classical music, or music from India, on the golden record that was sent out into space in the Voyager spacecraft. So it's out there in interstellar space, and fittingly and very deservingly, Kesar Bai Kerkar was the one chosen for that. And her music was otherworldly. In this recording, you'll see how that complex mukhda is she maintains that mukhda throughout the composition. Her akar, the a phonetic with which she sings, that's another hallmark of the Jaipur Gharana. In the alap of the Jaipur, when they do vistar, they do not use words. I mean, more recent times, there's more flexibility, so people have started using lyrical alaps, or bol alap as we call it, use of the sahitya or the words of the song, of the bandish in the development. But back in the day, the traditional Jaipur Gharana musicians, they were very strict about not using any bols during the progression of the compositional development. It had to be akar. So their voice development, that's the next thing to watch. Once you've looked at what the bandishes used to be like, the next thing that catches the eye when you listen to a Jaipur Gharana musician is the akar alap, the beauty of that akar, it's so wide, it's so open, and it's so balanced. The chest voice, the abdominal voice, the head voice, it's the whole balance of resonance in the tonality of that akar. And range and breadth capacity. They had inexhaustible breath spans. Kesarbai Kerkar, Mogubai, both of them used to sing huge avartans full with just one breath. That again is an offshoot of the Dhrupad Gaiki. Even in Dhrupad, you can't just breathe wherever you want. The line has to be complete. You have to breathe only after you finish a certain musical statement, and then once the sentence is complete, then you breathe and sing again. Very conscious about when you're breathing even. And that element holds good for Jaipur Gharana as well. So we'll take a listen to Kesarbai Kerkar singing this out of the world piece of music. It's a rag called Nat Kamod. It's one of my all-time favorite pieces, and you will see why in just a minute. Kesarbai Kerkar, Nat Kamod. That is the Mukhda. I'm going to go back to the Mukhda just for everybody to note what that Mukhda is like, okay? And we'll start again. Look at that range. And the breath span. All this in one breath. cycle is impeccable design. Oh my goodness. I think this one recording like this is enough to, just we can take one recording of 3 minutes and take a whole session on just that. What aspect of this do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about the akar, the range, the tan, the gamak, the balance, the avartan? I mean, each and every aspect of this music is mastered to an extent that is unimaginable in this one little piece of music. And the more you listen to it, the more it reveals even more deeper secrets. And then actually, if you are a singer or a musician and then you try to do that, then you realize even more that this is something extraordinary and very, very difficult. But I mean, beautiful music as well. So that was Kesar by Kerkar, and you saw how the mukhda is kept as is without much change. The akar, range, and the breath span is also something we saw. There's also another musician, almost her contemporary, slightly younger, I think, in age, and called Mogubai Kurdikar. Another one of my favorite Jaipur Gharana musicians. She was another example. I use her as almost an example to most of my students when I am teaching them to see how her voice is also, just like Esarbai's, no change, whether it's a lower range note or whether it's a mid-range or a higher range. It's just absolutely impeccably flowing. So I'm going to play a recording of Mogubai Kurdikar singing Rag Alhaya Bilawal. the designs. Uh-huh. Ah. Oops. Sorry. हाँ हाँ जी, we are back. Sorry about that. Uh, I see a few questions here. Renuji, I'm not sure exactly when. I'll have to look it up. I have the LP, the record at home. After this call, I'll go and just look at it and tell you if there's a year written for the recording. Camilla, what makes the phrases so perfect in each cycle? Practice and simple answer. But I mean, there's an interesting anecdote. And that's how we were all, when Gajanan Bua, my guru's guru, my guru's Ulhas Kashalkar and his guru, Gajanan Bua Joshi, went to Burji Khan Sahab, who's one of Aladia Khan Sahab's son. And when he went to him to learn and he was taking his lessons, it was extremely difficult for him to, he was a Gwalior Gharana singer and he had a different style. He was already an accomplished singer and everything. But even for him to kind of learn this style and adapt to, the way the avartans were tied and everything was extremely difficult. And he's written about it himself, about how he found it really difficult. And he used to actually try and take notes and to see how the avartan was actually so tightly and so perfectly designed. And another insight into that I have is from my other guru, Pandit Dinkar Kaikini. Dinkar ji's, my Guruji's father-in-law, Dr. Samsi, was a very prominent dentist and physician in Bombay back in the day. And he was a absolutely fanatic music lover. And he was one of those kinds who would suddenly, if he heard about there's a concert happening somewhere, and he would just drop everything and go and listen to it, even if it was an all night or whatever. Absolutely, mad, crazy in love with music. And because of that, he was also a great patron of the arts, and he used to treat all musicians free of charge and everything. And people and the musicians used to also appreciate him and the way he was so fond of them and their music and so respectful and all of that. So Aladia Khan Sahab would allow Dr. Samsi to, he was probably the only person who was ever allowed into his home when he was teaching Kesar Bhai Kerkar. And I'm told that was, a sight to behold. Aladia Khan Sahib used to be literally sleeping. He used to teach her, he used to give her an avartan, he used to teach her a certain cycle and a tan or whatever that she had to practice. And he used to just lie down right there, and she had to continue singing. And in Bombay, you get these red seeds that fall off these trees, seasonal trees. And then Kesarbai had to get a huge pile of those seeds. And every time she sang an avartan correctly, she would move one of those sticks or beads from the left to the right. And then this kept happening. And sometimes even after like 100, 300 times of repetitions, if one of those didn't come all right and she messed up or she was out of tune or something happened, Aladia Khan Sahib would wake up from his sleep and move all of those back to zero, and then she would have to start the count all over again. And so my guru's father-in-law, Dr. Samsi, was a witness to this. He has seen this happening. He has seen how for hours and hours and hours, sometimes 10, 12 hours at a stretch, Kesar Bhai was not allowed to even stop practicing. Even if her voice was giving way, he was like, nope, you will not stop until you get this avartan right 300 times or 500 times. So that was the way the talim happened. And I guess that the result of that is here for all of us to see, which is why that designing of that avartan is absolutely impeccable. Even when I was learning from Guruji, he had the system of these avartans had to be absolutely perfectly designed. And if you would do sargam Although when it comes to learning and performance, Jaipur Gharana does not do any sargam in its development. But while at the time of learning, we had to do sargam, we had to start, it's the clarity was the focus. And once we did that, practicing with solfege, with tal, avartan after avartan after avartan after avartan, and then finally that cycle becomes a part of your system. It just has to embed that time frame of those 16 beat cycle has to just kind of become second nature to you. Talking about 16 beats, you notice that all the three compositions that we played so far were in teen tal. So tells us something, right? Teen tal was favored tal for Jaipur Gharana. Most of their compositions tend to be in teen tal. Those that are not in teen tal are usually in either jhap tal or rupak. And sometimes in Vilambit, Ada Chautal as well, 14 beat cycle Ada Chautal. But usually we hear it in teen tal, jhap tal, and rupak. Some of the things, now we come from development and voice throw and breath and all of that to development or the vistar part. As I said, akar, vistar was very important. No sargam. That was a very strict rule that was followed back in the day. Even now, Jaipur Gharana musicians don't rely on sargam. It's not that one is good or bad. Tihais are another thing. You were never allowed to do tihais in Jaipur Gharana traditionally. It doesn't mean their concept was that if you're good in lay, if you're good in tal, then you should be able to design your avartan well enough, and it should be exciting and beautiful enough and subtle, in the way it cuts things and all of that, in a way that you come and land correctly at the mukda. Why do you want to come at another place and then take a tihai or something and then come to the sum? To their ideology, that seemed like it was either cheap or it was not, it was not required. It was an additional unnecessary stunt. Doesn't mean that it's a bad thing to do tihais at all. Other gharanas, Agra Gharana does a lot of tihais, and there's a lot of skill involved in tihais. Instrumentalists would vouch for that. It's not something easy. And from any place in the tal cycle, you take exactly a triple, phrase that is identical and sing it 3 times and land on the sum. It needs a lot of mathematical study and intuitively assimilating that mathematics. So it's a different, ideology, just as religion, there's no such thing as one is better than the other, no superiority here of any kind, but just that there are different ideologies. And if you subscribe to one gharana, you follow that gharana. And you take up a certain rag, depending on what gharana or what bandish I'm singing, I choose. Like Gajanan Bua Joshi, as I was mentioning, was a Gwalior Gharana musician initially, went and trained from Burji Khan Sahib and learned the Gwalior Jaipur Gaiki, went to Vilayat Hussain Khan Sahib and learned the Agra Gaiki as well. And he taught it to his students in a similar fashion. So when we received this vidya, this knowledge and this training, depending on what composition was taught, we had to, what composition I choose to perform, my delineation or the way I sing it, the vistar, the development will follow that particular style. Now, going to the traditional development, it had to be in akar, and the way in which it weaves through the tal and the bandish, the cycle of the teka, is something that is very, very unique. In the sense that there is a lot of anaghat and atit, which means falling right before a certain beat or just after a beat, and building phrases that correspond to each beat and each marker in a tal. By that I mean that even though we have a teen tal of a 16 beat cycle, there are certain points in that tal which are of additional significance. The 6th beat, the 10th beat, and the 14th beat assume a slightly more significant what can I say, place in the flow of the theka. So I'll give you a few examples. I'll actually demonstrate this maybe before I actually play any recordings for you. Let's say a very popular Jaipur Gharana rag called Bihagda. Let me know if the volume is too loud or too soft, and I will adjust the Tanpura volume I'm in. प्यारी पाग हो जैसे पग की पायल हारे हते ने का मेरो कहाँ तमा प्यारे बाग हो. Now this is a 16-beat tal cycle, teen tal, as I mentioned. Pyari pag hole in rag Bihagda. Now, I had mentioned to you that Mukhra is retained as exactly as it is. So, Pyari pag ho, that's the essential part of the Mukhra, but there is something that leads to it. Ye pyari pag ho, that also has to be maintained. So if you notice where this is the beat, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. ये प्यारे पग हो प्यारी पग प्यारे पग हो. That was not a very good avartan. See how it goes? It seems like it's going off beat, but it's actually connected. raga dhol. So that's an example, just to show you how, even though the tal is there, it's going matra to matra, I'm following every beat, it's woven there, but the way it kind of builds through, it kind of weaves through the alap is kind of, it almost seems like it's going out of beat, but there's always something that comes back and connects to every single beat. This particular weaving is very typical of Jaipur. Let's listen to a couple of recordings that demonstrate this beautifully. I'm going to play, let's see, Gajan Bua Joshi, my Dada Guru, singing Rag Savani. The recording quality is not very good, but from a study perspective, it's fantastic. Oh, sorry, wrong recording. It's a very short mukda, Deva Deva, and you see that when it's in Japtal, and the whole alap kind of goes off beat all the time. It's going a little before or a little after the beat, and finally comes and lands on the mukda. So that was an example of how the alap actually goes slightly offbeat, almost, So to give you another short example, here, listen to this. It's a better recording. Guesses who this is? Yes, the one and only Kishori Amonkar. This, we heard the third recording today was of Mogubai Kurudikar, and Mogubai Kurudikar's daughter and disciple was Kishori Amonkar, who was one of the most celebrated vocalists in the last century or so. She was absolutely up there. Fantastic musician, pioneering musician, loved to break all the rules. And things like I mentioned, there's no tihais were allowed. So people didn't like to do alap in anything other than akar, but she started using words once in a while. So she was prepared to kind of push the envelope and break the rules a little bit. So that was some insight into the development of the Jaipur Gaiki. Very quickly, I'll point out one or two other details. The tans. Jaipur musicians came up with some exquisite tan patterns and tan varieties. The way in which they designed that avartan was extremely unique. And instead of me talking about it, here's a small clip to start with, and then I'll give you a little more of a explanation about what makes it unique. This is Guruji. My Guruji, Pandit Ulhas Kashalkar. This is Rag Bihagada. Typical design. The same rag that I was singing in the Alap, Bihagda. So that was another example of Tankari. The avartan is designed in a way that you open it in a certain way, you develop that and go to the higher notes, and then you finish. But the way in which the patterns are it's like a necklace, it's like a beautiful chain. So you do numerical patterns, you do palta patterns and all of that in a way that's very unique. Here's another example of another musician of the older generation, Nivrutti Bua Sarnaik. This is a rag called Kafi Kannada, and in this you'll see how he builds in beautiful numeric patterns, make it very complex. Patterns of 5, patterns of 7, and mixing them to 5, 7, 5, 7, 3, 3, 3, 5, 7, all of that. But then he comes absolutely impeccably on the sum. And the tal is going there beautifully, calmly, like like a continuous flowing river. Rag Kafi Kannada Tan demonstration from recording of Nivrutti Bua Sarnaik. Look at the way it cuts the tal. क्या बात है. So that was Nivruti Sarnaik showing us Tan patterns of Jaipur through that composition. So I think that almost brings us to, we're also out of time, but I think we're almost done with the different aspects that we were going to discuss with today. Are you able to see my screen? Let me try it again. Yeah, so what to watch for? Bandish structures and the different aspects that go into bandishes. We went through tal preferences. We spoke about how they prefer to do teen tal, but also a little bit of japtal and drupa compositions are quite common. Once in a while, we also see Ada Chautal compositions in Vilambit. Now, another very important point is that the older traditional Jaipur Gharana musicians did not even bother singing Drut Khyats. Their renditions were just Vilambit. The Vilambit composition would stretch and they would say whatever they had to say in that composition, right? They've done the tals, they've done the alap, they've done everything that had to be done. And they didn't feel the need to go into a Drut. So they would just leave it there. There was no need to, again, take another Drut composition. That was the older. Nowadays, of course, even in Jaipur, we do sing a Drut composition because that's kind of become more of a standard practice. We spoke about voice application and their attributes. We spoke about the different, important aspects of how they develop their alap, the way in which the alap corresponds to the tal and teka, and of course, different tan prakar and the designs with which Jaipur Gharana builds its tans. Another important aspect which we didn't get to explicitly talk about was Jod ragas and mixed ragas that Jaipur is known for. We played a few though. We listened to Bihagada, which is not very commonly sung in other gharanas. We listened to Nat Kamod, which Kesar Bhai performed in the LP, and I played that. I think that is the second recording that we played today. The beautiful Nat Kamod, Nevar Bajo. That was also a Jod Rag, Nat Kamod, Chayanat and Kamod. So that's another aspect of this gharana that's quite unique. Talking about popular artists of this gharana, we went through some of them. The first generation after Ladya Khan Sahab, of course, were Kesar Bhai Kerkar, Mogu Bhai Kurudikar, Mallikarjun Mansoor, Nivruti Bua Sarnaik, and Gajanand Bua Joshi. I put them in this list here. Then we have Kishori Amonkar, who was somewhere of an in-between generation. She was not in that generation. She was Mogu Bhai Kurudikar's daughter, in fact, which was much older to all of these people that come in this category here. Shruti Sadolikar, Ashwini Bhide, Padma Talwalkar, Guruji, Ulhas Kashalkar. I wish we had another extra hour to listen to all of these phenomenal musicians and scholars, So, and then, of course, the honorable mentions, some really, really fantastic musicians of this gharana. Lakshmi Bai Jadhav, Kaushalya Manjeshwar, Padmavati Shaligram, Ratnakar Pai, Vijay Jadhav Gatlewar, Jayashri Patnekar. You'll find all of them on YouTube and other online resources. If you want, you could take a screenshot of this slide or a photograph of this slide so that you have that to, go on with listening. And again, some book recommendations to listen to, starting with, of course, yours truly. This book called Raga Sangeet is here, and I've also attached the link here, the Amazon link. There's Khyal Gharanas by Vamanrao Deshpande. Vamanrao Deshpande was a disciple of Mogubai Kurdikar. So you will see a lot of bias towards Jaipur Gharana, but it's a very, very good book if someone wants to understand the basics of this music. Music Room by Namita Devi Dayal is a book about it features Kesar Bhai Kerkar and her student Dhundutai Kulkarni, It's another very, very nice read. I would highly recommend it. Lost World of Hindustani Music by K.P. Mukherjee. Aesthetics of Agra and Jaipur Gaikis by Baban Rao Haldankar. These are all books. You could again take a screenshot of this. And here, this is again something we spoke of last week as well. The movie recommendation, Raga Revelry. It talks about gharanas, it talks about how music is taught, and it's got a good 2.5 hours of bonus tracks that you get when you buy this 90-minute film. It has many, many senior, very senior performing artists like Kichlu Sahib himself, Vijay Kichluji, Shubhra Guha, Guruji, and Tanmay Bose, Tejendra Narayan Mazumdar, and many of these stalwarts actually sitting down and explaining some basic concepts and teaching. They have actual videos that teach you tals and basic fundamentals of ragas and how to practice paltas and all of that. So it's a very good thing to have with you and keep going back to as a supplement to your learning or understanding of music. And last but not the least, tomorrow I will be launching my Patreon. So here is the virtual, here's the link to my Patreon, which you can actually go and take a look right now. It's live, but and if you want to sign up, you're most welcome to. But I think May 1st would be a good day to start signing up. But if you feel like it, you're most welcome to go ahead and sign up even now. There is some content already there, and I'll be adding more and more content going forward. And this link here is a Zoom link for tomorrow's launch at 9 p.m. Just getting together with friends and whoever would like to join to launch this. We'll talk about what are the different things that I'm going to be doing. We can also talk about what are the different things that you would like me to do, any subjects that you want me to take up, how much of music you want to hear, whose music you want to hear, what subjects you want to discuss in the videos that I'm going to be putting out, and all of those things. We can go into, we can talk about that and maybe even listen to some great music. So tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern time, that's for those in India, that would be 6:30 a.m. on Saturday morning. I'm so sorry. But that is the only time I could find, I could really manage to get. Yeah, hopefully you'll all be able to join me tomorrow at this launch. And I think that brings us to the end of Jaipur Gharana's series. Let me try and... Yeah, so hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Bring your favorite beverage, depending on what time zone you are in, and let's sit together and, raise a toast and do a long journey going forward. And once again, big thank you to Brooklyn Raga Massive for facilitating this and for sponsoring this and for giving this gift to the world of music and to all of you, all of us and all of you. Thanks to ViewC for getting this, for saving the day from more embarrassment on Zoom. And next week we'll be talking about another very important gharana. But since it's the last day of the series, I won't be spending the whole time on one gharana. I'll cover kirana a little bit, very important salient points and some very important musicians, and then quickly go on to talk about some other smaller offshoot gharanas, and then we'll do hopefully a longer Q&A. So that's what we'll do tomorrow. Yeah. Thank you so much. Over and out. I think Neil and David are here to take over from me.
Yeah. Thanks, Samarth. Another great class. So much music to now delve into. That was really great. I'll just, before we say goodnight, remind people to go to brooklynragamassive.com because we have so many more great classes coming up. Swati Ranganathan and Mark Carey and Ken Wessel. And next week, this Tuesday, is Melvis Santa teaching a class on Afro-Cuban music. And so much there. Just check it out, and we hope to see you. And thanks and good night. Thanks again, Samarth. That was amazing.
I don't have access. Can you, David, could you please I just lost access to the ViewC. Oh, there it is. Someone was asking me about the link to the Patreon in the chat. So I'm just quickly typing it here.
Good. Go ahead and do that.
There it is.
We can also put. Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. Yeah, thank you. And I have one more question. Do I have like another minute to answer this? I think
Go
it's
for
an
it.
important question. The question is about why there are so many female musicians, ladies who are popular in the Jaipur Gharana. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh.
Oh, I think he's pinned, right?
I don't know what happened. I just, there it is. Yeah, so I was just, I want to answer this one question that I got saying, why are there so many popular ladies, women singers from this gharana as compared to other gharanas? I don't have the answer to that question actually, but I want to say that there are lots of misconceptions, lots of theories that it's true that we have Kesar Bai, Mogu Bai, Ashwini Bhide, Shruti Sarolikar, and so many musicians, very popular musicians who've come out from this gharana. Whereas if you think of Gwalior and Agra, there are not as many, and even if there are, they haven't achieved the same kind of popularity and fame and acceptance as those from these gharanas from Jaipur have. There is a notion that Agra and Gwalior are more mardangi or more masculine kind of music, and Jaipur is not. I do not subscribe to that concept. I do think that aesthetics in music or aesthetics in anything, beauty and aesthetics can't be defined and boxed into one kind of, it has to be a certain kind of sweet or it has to be a certain kind of melodious or I don't agree with that ideology. But however, it's true that there are more popular musicians from the Jaipur Gharana style. But going forward, I don't know if that will remain. So there are lots of musicians from other gharanas, women musicians who are actually getting very popular and are receiving a lot of acceptance these days. So I just wanted to put that one answer in before signing off. Yeah, thank you. And hope to see you all tomorrow at the Patreon launch and then again next week, next Thursday. And David, you said you have need we have a few more BRM sessions between now and next Thursday?
Oh, well, just there's one Melva Santa on Tuesday, but we have Steve Gorn and a whole bunch of other great musicians that people will want to see the schedule and check them out. Abik Mukherjee is going to do a whole bunch of lessons as well. So
great. Yeah. Look forward to it.
Yeah, likewise. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you, Samarth.
Thank you. Thank you so much.